Once upon a time, on a magical tropical island, lived an adventurous little toucan named Ted. Ted's feathers were the most radiant reds, blues, and greens, with a beak of bright yellow that glistened in the island's sunshine. Ted was by far one of the most colourful birds on the island. Ted spent most of his days exploring the rainforest and bathing in the island's sun. One day, as Ted was gliding high above the island, he noticed something glistening in the air. It was a huge, fluffy, golden feather, floating gently in the breeze.
Wow, that is the most perfect feather I have ever seen,
Ted said to himself. Ted dipped low, gliding just above the tall green palm trees, eagerly following the golden feather. A breeze swooped the feather up high into the sky. It twirled and swayed in the warm island air as if it were dancing across the sky. Ted followed the feather, but it was just out of reach as it gently fluttered out to sea.
Oh no,
Ted exclaimed.
My perfect feather.
Ted sighed as he headed back inland.
I shall have to find another perfect feather.
Ted flapped his colourful wings and headed out on his journey across the magical island. Ted soared across the beach, its endless soft white sands, scattered with clusters of beautiful seashells left by the ocean's tide. Ted noticed a feather sat on top of a piece of driftwood.
That looks like a good feather,
he said. Ted flew down with effortless grace, landing on the piece of driftwood with a gentle thump.
This is a good feather. But it's not the perfect feather.
Ted took a few moments to rest on the driftwood. The sun was shining brightly in the clear blue sky, casting a golden glow over the whole island, the gentle waves lapping rhythmically against the sandy shore. Ted flew leisurely into the tropical forest. Whilst only very small, the island was dotted with hundreds of tall, luscious palm trees. The island floor covered with greenery of giant ferns and vibrant flowers, their exotic scent filling the island air. Deep in the middle of this magical island stood a waterfall, crashing gently into the sapphire blue lake. Rocks surrounded the lake as they glistened in the sunlight, as if they were covered in hundreds of tiny sparkling gems. Ted flew towards the lake and flitted gracefully, winding in and out of the waterfall, his wings catching a light spray of water. He perched for a moment on a moss-covered rock and noticed a beautiful feather floating on the lake.
Now, that's a good feather,
he said to himself cheerfully. The feather, light and delicate, rested softly on the water's surface. Carried along by the gentle current, it floated gracefully, bobbing gently with each ripple. Just as Ted was about to take flight from his moss-covered rock towards the feather, it floated under the waterfall. Ted waited patiently for the feather to reappear. He waited and waited, but it was gone.
Perhaps I'll try to find my perfect feather again tomorrow,
Ted said.
It's getting quite late.
As the day drew to a close and the sky turned into a canvas of pinks and oranges, Ted found a cozy perch on a sturdy branch overlooking the sea. The gentle lullaby of the waves and the soothing rustle of the palm trees soon made Ted feel very sleepy indeed. Settling down on the branch, Ted closed his eyes and thought about his perfect feather. He took one last look up at the night sky, scattered with 1,000 twinkling stars, when he noticed something shimmering in the moonlight, gliding past branches and leaves, brushing against the giant ferns. It was a feather. Ted watched the feather twirl and sway, spiraling gently downwards. Finally, with a gentle sigh, the feather landed on Ted's palm tree and nestled just at his feet. He couldn't believe his eyes.
It's the perfect golden feather,
Ted said. Ted took the feather and proudly placed it next to him on his branch. As night set in, Ted settled down for a bed in his cozy tree, ready to drift off into a peaceful slumber. Ted wondered what kind of magical place a bird of golden feathers could come from. Ted smiled happily, surrounded by the beauty of the magical island. With his perfect feather nestled closely, he felt a complete sense of peace and happiness wash over him as he drifted off into a deep and restful sleep.